who simply disagree with him, people he calls, quote, the enemy from within. America, this is not a candidate for president who is thinking about how to make your life better. This is someone who is unstable, obsessed with revenge, consumed with grievance, and out for unchecked power. Donald Trump has spent a decade trying to keep the American people divided and afraid of each other. That is who he is. But America, I am here tonight to say that is not who we are. That is not who we are. That is not who we are. You see, what Donald Trump has never understood is that e pluribus unum, out of many, one, isn't just a phrase on a dollar bill. It is a living truth about the heart of our nation. Our democracy doesn't require us to agree on everything. In fact, we like good arguments from time to time. Just think of your own family, right? It's not the American way to not have disagreements. We don't shy away from robust debate. In fact, we like a good debate, don't we? We like a good debate. And the fact that someone disagrees with us does not make them the enemy within. They are family, neighbors, classmates, co-workers. They are fellow Americans. And as Americans, we rise and fall together. America, for too long, we have been consumed with too much division, chaos, and mutual distrust. And it can be easy then to forget a simple truth. It doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. It is time to stop pointing fingers. We have to stop pointing fingers and start locking arms. It is time to turn the page on the drama and the conflict, the fear and division. It is time for a new generation of leadership in America. And I am ready to offer that leadership as the next President of the United States of America. Now look, let me say, I recognize this has not been a typical campaign. Even though I've had the honor of serving as your vice president for the last 4 years, I know that many of you are still getting to know who I am. Well, let me tell you, I am someone who has spent most of my career outside of Washington, D.C., so I know that not all the good ideas come from here. I am not afraid of tough fights against bad actors and powerful interests, because for decades, as a prosecutor and a top law enforcement officer of our biggest state, I won fights against big banks that ripped off homeowners, against for-profit colleges that scammed veterans and students, against predators who abused women and children, and cartels that trafficked in guns, drugs, and human beings. And I did this work because for as long as I can remember, I have always had an instinct to protect. There's something about people being treated unfairly or overlooked that frankly just gets to me. I don't like it. It's what my mother instilled in me, a drive to hold accountable those who use their wealth or power to take advantage of other people. the drive to protect hardworking Americans who aren't always seen or heard and deserve a voice, and I will tell you that is the kind of president I will be. And look, I'll be honest with you, I'm not perfect, I make mistakes, but here's what I promise you. I will always listen to you, even if you don't vote for me. I will always tell you the truth, even if it is difficult to hear. I will work every day to build consensus and reach compromise to get things done. And if you give me the chance to fight on your behalf, there is nothing in the world that will stand in my way. So look, in less than 90 days, either Donald Trump or I will be in the Oval Office. Okay?
X on this issue, and I'm glad you're going to hopefully be outspoken right here on Squawk about this particular plan. I'm curious both what your take is on the tax plan itself as it relates to capital gains, what you've been hearing from other entrepreneurs and investors, and then maybe we can get into some of the debate about unrealized gains as well.
Sure. Well, let me talk about the process, because I think that's the most important element here when it comes to the vice president's tax approach. You know, I've talked to the Biden administration, I've talked to the Trump administration, I've talked to the Obama administration, and I think the Harris administration has been most open. I mean, they've been very clear to me and other business people that, look, we've realized that rich people have to pay their fair share, but we don't have all the answers. So, Mark and others, what do you think is the best approach to taxing wealthy people so that they pay their fair share to help contribute to reducing the deficit, and we can come up with some new ideas? And let me just tell you, I probably talk to them, and I know others do as well, 3-4 times a week about what's the best approach to taxing the wealthy and increasing revenues and cutting costs, for that matter.
So what did you tell them originally? What do you think the right rate for capital gains should be?
Well, you know, you heard her in her speech yesterday. She said that, you know, billionaires should pay more than, you know, the average working people, firefighters, et cetera. And if you just look at the numbers, right, if a firefighter or someone who's working their butt off is making, you know, $150,000 a year, they're paying 24%. And she came out yesterday and said 28% for capital gains, which when I talked to them, I thought was fair. Now, the next question is, does it include the AC?
Yes.
The Hickey, right? Does it include the extra 3.8%? And they didn't commit to a number to me, but what they told me is they expected it to end up with a 2 handle.
Well, but 3.8% potentially going to 5% is what some places are reporting. So 28% sounds fair to you, Mark. Does 33% sound fair if that's what it ends up being? If we're still talking about numbers that we don't quite know.
Yeah, I agree with you. 33% is not right. And again, I'm not committing what the final number is going to be, but every conversation I've had, including up to yesterday after her speech, was that it was going to end up with the 2 handle.
Let me ask you a broader question, Mark. A lot of folks have come on our broadcast who are critical of the vice president and her campaign have suggested that she's a progressive and that she is going to operate very similarly to Biden, or in some cases, people have suggested she's going to operate even to more to the left of Biden as it relates to regulation, potentially taxes, other things related to business. On the other side, you hear, at least privately, from folks in and around the Biden campaign saying, no, we're really tacking to the middle. What do you think is really happening here?
Kamala Harris is pro-business. This is Kamala Harris's campaign. It's not Joe Biden's campaign. Right? Kamala Harris is not Joe Biden. They're very, very different. She's trying to be, again, this is my perspective, she's trying to be very respectful of the president and everything he's proposed. She's trying not to directly contradict him in any way. You know, so she talks a little bit around the subject when it comes to taxing in particular, but she's going center 100%. I mean, literally, if you read the transcript of her speech yesterday, she's talked more about entrepreneurs and helping them have access to investment and making it easier for people to invest in startups than any president that I've ever heard talk about startups and entrepreneurs.
So to the extent
literally, she listens, right? This is not something where it's just her policy team comes out and says, Mark, you know, or whoever, let's hope this works. No, she's like, list me things you think we should be talking about. You're the entrepreneur. You invest in more startups than anybody I know. What do you think we should be doing, and what's going to increase the number of investments in startups? And I've had other conversations with their team where it's like I literally go through and say the higher the capital gains tax, the more difficult it is to invest in riskier investments. And the people who have the hardest time getting risk capital are women, people of color, you know, young kids that are coming out of colleges. Exactly. The people The people who have the hardest time getting risk capital are women, people of color, young kids that are coming out of colleges. Exactly. The people you want to take risk on, the higher the cap gains rate, the harder it is to invest in them for obvious reasons. And they understand that, and they've adapted as a result.
Mark, if people are policy, what are the kinds of people you think she's ultimately going to appoint to her cabinet and around her? And I'm thinking of a Treasury Secretary. I'm thinking of,
I have no idea.
Folks who are going to run commerce. But I think it's an important question. I think it's a question about who's going to run the FTC, who's going to run antitrust for the DOJ. I mean, do you get a sense, and I think one of the critiques has been that the Biden administration did not surround itself with virtually anybody from the private sector.
Right. I agree with you 100%. So two things. One, I told her team, look, put my name in for the SEC. It needs to change. And two, that I've strongly suggested that she put together a multi-level business advisory group. And they said, once we get past the debate, it's something we're going to look very strongly at. And when the details of that I suggested were, one, you have small entrepreneurs and just a council of those types of business people. Two, medium-sized companies, because they have different issues than smaller, larger. And then, the big companies, because they're going to have a completely different perspective. Because the advisory groups that I've been on, there's a whole wide range of people, and it's hard for anybody to come to an alignment because we all have different priorities. But by having this three-tier council, and again, these are just conversations I'm having. I'm not committing to anything for them, but and making it easier for people to invest in startups than any president that I've ever heard talk about startups and entrepreneurs.
So to the extent
literally, she listens, right? This is not something where it's just her policy team comes out and says, Mark, or whoever, let's hope this works. No, she's like, list me things you think we should be talking about. You're the entrepreneur. You invest in more startups than anybody I know. What do you think we should be doing, and what's going to increase the number of investments in startups? And I've had other conversations with their team where it's like I literally go through and say the higher the capital gains tax, the more difficult it is to invest in riskier investments. And the people who have the hardest time getting risk capital are women, people of color, young kids that are coming out of colleges. Exactly. The people you want to take risk on, the higher the cap gains rate, the harder it is to invest in them for obvious reasons. And they understand that, and they've adapted as a result.
Mark, if people are policy, what are the kinds of people you think she's ultimately going to appoint to her cabinet and around her? And I'm thinking of a Treasury Secretary. I'm thinking of,
I have no idea.
Folks who are going to run commerce. But I think it's an important question. I think it's a question about who's going to run the FTC, who's going to run antitrust for the DOJ. I mean, do you get a sense, and I think one of the critiques
Yeah.